They say heartbreak changes you. I think betrayal by your own blood changes you even more. 16 years ago, I lost my husband and my mother all in the same breath. I never thought my life would collapse so quietly. No screaming matches, no broken dishes flying across the room, just a slow, almost polite unraveling of everything I thought was solid. It started on a Tuesday night. I was folding laundry on the couch, half watching an old sitcom, when I noticed my husband's phone buzzing on the coffee table. Normally, I wouldn't have even looked twice. But that night, something made me pick it up. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was survival. Whatever it was, it led me straight to the messages, dozens of them, flirty, cruel, careless messages between my husband and his friend, the woman he swore was just someone from work. I sat there numb, reading through months' worth of betrayal, words that shredded whatever illusions I had left about the life we were living. We hadn't been happy for years, we barely spoke, we tiptoed around each other like strangers renting the same space. I knew we were broken, but seeing the proof undeniable in black and white still took the air out of my lungs. That night, after putting my 7-year-old son to bed, I quietly packed a bag. Not much, just enough clothes for a few days. Important papers and my son's favorite stuffed dinosaur. I left a short note on the kitchen counter. Not out of kindness, but because I knew that if I tried to explain face to face, I might never leave. Then I walked out the door and into the cold night. My son's small hand wrapped tightly in mine. I didn't look back. Filing for divorce was surprisingly easy, legally at least. Emotionally, it felt like amputating a part of myself without anesthesia. Still, I believed naively that I was doing the right thing, that when the dust settled, I would have my family behind me, that they would be proud of me for choosing dignity over a hollow marriage. I was wrong. My father, sweet gentleman, that he was quietly supported my decision. He didn't say much, but his hugs were tighter, his eyes softer when he looked at me. My mother, on the other hand, reacted like I had personally set fire to everything she had ever believed in. "You're ruining everything," she hissed at me over the phone one evening. "A woman makes a marriage work no matter what. That's your job. That's what family means." I tried to reason with her, tried to explain the loneliness, the betrayal, the years of silent suffering. She didn't want to hear it. In her mind, it didn't matter what he had done. All that mattered was that I stay married. Appearances had to be maintained at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing my happiness, my self-respect, my sanity. The arguments between us escalated fast. Every call turned into a shouting match. Every meeting ended with me feeling smaller, more broken. It wasn't just disappointment she threw at me. It was disgust. "You let him slip away?" she spat. "You weren't good enough to keep your family together. You're a disgrace to our name." I started avoiding her calls, stopped visiting, pulled away. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Self-preservation demanded it. But even that thin thread of connection was about to snap completely. 4 months into the divorce proceedings, my father died of a heart attack. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. The man who had quietly kept our fractured family together was gone. And with him, any hope of reconciliation. I went to his funeral, feeling like a ghost. I stood in the back, clutching the program, watching my mother sob at the front and knowing I wasn't welcome at her side. Afterward, I approached her, heart pounding, desperate for some sign that we could find our way back to each other. She didn't even let me speak. "Don't you dare come near me," she snapped, voice low and venomous. "You killed your marriage. You killed your father. I have nothing left to say to you." I staggered back, stunned. It felt like she had reached into my chest and ripped out whatever was left of my heart. That was the last time I saw her. For 16 years, she didn't call, she didn't write, and neither did I. I had lost my husband, I had lost my mother, I had lost the only family I had ever known. And somewhere deep inside, I started to believe that maybe I deserved it. Maybe I wasn't good enough to be loved after all. The weeks after the funeral were a blur. Grief has a way of hollowing you out, turning even simple tasks into mountains. You don't have the energy to climb. I still had to wake up every morning. Still had to pack my son's lunches, drive him to school, pay bills, answer emails, but inside I was moving through water, thick, heavy, cold. The town I lived in felt smaller than ever. Everyone seemed to know my business. At the grocery store, I caught the lingering stares. In the school pickup line, I overheard the whispers, "Poor thing. Her husband left her, you know. And her mother won't even speak to her anymore." It was like wearing a scarlet letter stitched across my chest. I knew I had to get out. Not just for me, but for my son too. He deserved more than this. More than a mother drowning in shame, surrounded by people waiting for her to fail. So I made a decision. I applied for jobs out of state, casting my net wide, not really caring where I landed, just needing to be somewhere else, anywhere else. It took a few weeks, but eventually I found a job, decent pay, decent hours, and I packed up our lives into a battered minivan and drove away from everything I'd ever known. No goodbye parties, no tearful farewells, just silence and a small boy in the back seat clutching his dinosaur tight against his chest. The new city wasn't glamorous, a little rough around the edges, but it was ours. We rented a cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper and ancient carpet. But to me, it felt like a palace. Nobody here knew my name. Nobody here cared about my past. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. But breathing didn't mean I wasn't lonely. God, the loneliness was like another body in the apartment pressing against me at night when the house grew too still. I missed my father's steady presence, missed even the chance, however slim, of mending things with my mother. There were nights I would sit on the kitchen floor after my son went to bed, staring at the cracked linoleum, wondering if I had made a huge mistake. If maybe my mother was right, maybe I was too selfish, maybe I was the reason everyone left. But then I'd hear a small voice from the next room. Mom, are you okay? And I would pull myself up. Smile, lie. I'm fine, baby. Everything's okay because it had to be. Building a new life wasn't easy. Money was tight, the work was exhausting. I was juggling daycare pickups, late night work shifts, bills, grocery shopping, homework alone. There were no family barbecues, no lazy Sunday dinners with grandparents, no safety nets. It was just me and him, two against the world. But slowly, very slowly, something began to change. I started finding small pockets of joy, like the way my son's face lit up when we found a $2 toy car at a thrift store, or the way our tiny apartment filled with laughter during our Friday night pajama parties, where we would eat popcorn for dinner and watch old Disney movies on a beat-up laptop. We were poor, we were tired, but we were together, and that meant more to me than any picture-perfect life I had left behind. Still, there were wounds I carried deep inside. Invisible bruises from words spoken years ago, words that echoed in my mind when I was at my lowest. You're a disgrace. You weren't enough. You brought this on yourself. No matter how much success I found, no matter how well I raised my son, a part of me still lived under the shadow of those accusations. The truth was, I had built a life without my mother brick by careful brick, but the foundation was still cracked. And I didn't realize just how deep those cracks ran. Not until 16 years later. When she came back, it happened on a Tuesday again. Funny, isn't it, how life sometimes circles back to remind you that you're never really done healing, not even after 16 years. I was chopping vegetables for dinner when the doorbell rang. At first, I thought it might be a package delivery or a neighbor needing something. But when I opened the door, it wasn't a stranger, it was her. My mother, older now, much older. Her once jet black hair had faded into soft gray. Her face, once stern and polished, was lined with the unmistakable signature of time and loss. For a moment, the world tilted sideways. I gripped the door frame, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. Neither of us spoke. Finally, she gave me a small, tentative smile, the kind you give when you're not sure if you're about to be embraced or slapped. Hi, she said, her voice rough around the edges. I heard about the wedding. I want to be there if you'll let me. I didn't move. I didn't invite her in. All I could think about was the last conversation we had had, or rather the last words she had hurled at me like knives. You're a disgrace. You killed your marriage. You killed your father. How do you just walk back from that? I asked her how she found me. Apparently, she had contacted a few of my old high school friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, and one of them reluctantly or carelessly had given her my address. There she stood now, asking for something she hadn't earned a seat at my son's wedding. A part of me, a small, buried, hopeful part, waited for her to say more. An apology, a confession, anything. But she just stood there silent as if showing up was enough, and maybe for her it was. But for me, it wasn't. I let out a soft, bitter laugh, the kind you can't control once the dam of hurt finally cracks. No, I said quietly. You're not invited, and you're not welcome. Her face crumpled in disbelief. For a second, she looked small, smaller than I ever remembered her being. But I didn't care. I couldn't care because caring hurt too much. I closed the door without another word. Later that night, I sat on the porch, a blanket wrapped tightly around me, even though the evening was warm, staring at the stars, wondering why my chest still ached, even after all this time I had won. Hadn't I? I had stood my ground. I had protected myself. So why did it feel like I'd lost something all over again? I called my son, told him what had happened. I expected him to be proud, expected him to say, "Good for you, Mom, you don't owe her anything." But instead, he was quiet, too quiet. "Mom," he said carefully, choosing his words like someone trying to defuse a bomb. Maybe you should have talked to her first." "She showed up," he continued. "After all these years, that has to mean something. Maybe she doesn't know how to say she's sorry. Maybe just being here was her way of trying." I felt my stomach twist painfully. He wasn't excusing what she had done. He wasn't minimizing my hurt. He was just offering another perspective. He reminded me that forgiveness wasn't for her benefit, it was for mine. "You always tell me to choose kindness when I can," he said softly. "Maybe now it's your turn." It was a gut punch. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right. I stayed up most of that night, thinking, remembering, hurting. There was a battle raging inside me between the wounded child who wanted to slam the door forever and the grown woman who knew that time, real time, was running out. Because no matter how much anger I had carried all these years, I knew one thing for certain. One day my mother would be gone, and I would have to live with whatever choice I made today. Did I want to live with the regret of not even trying? Or did I want to take the risk, the terrifying, vulnerable risk of opening the door again? By the time the first light of morning spilled across my kitchen floor, I had made a decision. I picked up the phone. With shaking fingers, I found the number my old friend had given me. I took a deep breath and pressed call. The phone barely rang once before she picked up. "Hello." Her voice sounded so small, so tentative, like she was bracing for me to hang up on her. For a second, I almost did. Old instincts die hard. But I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced the words out. Would you like to come over for dinner?" There was a pause. A hesitation so thick it made my chest ache, then a soft broken, "I'd love to." The day she came over, the weather was gray and restless, heavy clouds pressing low against the sky. It matched the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I had spent the morning cleaning the house obsessively, rearranging furniture that didn't need rearranging, scrubbing countertops that were already spotless. It wasn't about impressing her, it was about trying to feel in control. My son and his fiancée were there too, hovering like quiet bodyguards ready to step in if things went sideways. When my mother finally knocked, I hesitated before opening the door, just 1 second, long enough to steady my breathing. Then I opened it and let her in. She looked around my home, taking everything in with wide, almost reverent eyes. "It's beautiful," she said, voice thick with emotion. We sat at the dining table, the same table where I had celebrated birthdays, holidays, scraped by on tight months, and laughed through quiet victories with just my son. It felt surreal to see her sitting there now, like a ghost stepping into a life she had once abandoned. Dinner was awkward, stiff, small talk, nervous laughter that didn't quite reach our eyes. But after the plates were cleared, after the coffee was poured, the air shifted, my mother reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it lightly over mine. "I need to say something," she whispered. "Please just let me say it." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and then she broke, not with a few polite tears, but with heaving, heart-wrenching sobs that seemed to come from the deepest parts of her soul. "I was wrong," she cried. "I was so wrong about everything about you. I let my pride, my upbringing, and my fear blind me. I let other people poison my heart against my own daughter. I thought I was protecting you. That if I could just force you back into that marriage, maybe you'd be safe. Maybe you wouldn't have to face the shame I thought divorce would bring." Her words spilled out raw and unfiltered. She told me about the pressure she had felt from her extended family, about the fear that had been hammered into her since childhood that a woman's worth was tied to her marriage, no matter how miserable it made her. "When your father died," she sobbed, "I needed someone to blame, and I chose you because I was too broken to look at myself." Every word hit me like a blow. Not because I didn't already know deep down, I had suspected most of it, but because hearing her say it out loud was a different kind of devastation, a validation of every wound I had carried silently for 16 years. And yet, as I watched her break down in front of me, something inside me softened. I saw not the mother who had betrayed me, but the scared, grieving, imperfect woman who had made terrible mistakes, and was now asking, however clumsily, for a second chance. I reached across the table and took her hand in mine. Her fingers were thin, her skin papery and warm. "I can't forget everything," I said quietly, "but maybe we can start from here." She looked up at me, tears still streaming down her face, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw my mother, not the woman shaped by fear and judgment, but the woman who used to tuck me into bed with lullabies and soft kisses on my forehead. That night after she had gone to bed in the guest room, I sat on the porch with my son. The air was cool and crisp. The stars hidden all evening behind clouds finally peeked out one by one. "You did a good thing tonight, Mom," he said, bumping his shoulder lightly against mine. "I'm scared." I admitted, "I don't know if I can ever fully trust her again." He nodded thoughtfully. "You don't have to. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It just means choosing love even when it's hard." I smiled, blinking back sudden tears. Maybe we weren't rewriting the past. Maybe we were just planning something new. Small, fragile, but real. The weeks after our reconciliation felt like a dream I was afraid to wake up from. My mother stayed with me as we made quiet, careful steps toward rebuilding what had once been shattered. We cooked meals together. She helped me tend my tiny backyard garden. We laughed real belly-deep laughter over silly things like burnt casseroles and cheesy sitcom reruns. There were still moments of awkwardness. Old scars have a way of itching even after they've supposedly healed. But every day, the spaces between the silences grew smaller. The warmth between us grew stronger. It felt good. It felt like hope. When the day of my son's wedding finally arrived, my mother stood beside me in the second row, dabbing at her eyes with a delicate handkerchief. "You raised a wonderful man," she whispered during the ceremony. "You did it all on your own, and you did it beautifully." I didn't answer, I just squeezed her hand, because some moments are too big for words. A few days later, she told me she needed to go back home for a little while to finalize the sale of her old house and wrap up loose ends. "I'll be back soon," she promised. It's just beginning again. I believed her with my whole heart. She left with a suitcase and a hug that lingered long after she had walked out the door, and for the first time in 16 years, I wasn't scared of being left behind. We kept in touch almost daily, texting, calling, FaceTiming. But over the weeks, I noticed small changes. She looked tired, thinner. Her vibrant laugh seemed just a little more forced. When I asked, she waved it off. "Bad phone camera," she said. "Nothing to worry about," and I wanted to believe her. Until I got the call. 2 days ago, a stranger's voice on the other end of the line, a nurse who had been helping care for her. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Your mother passed away peacefully last night. Acute myeloid leukemia, advanced terminal. She had known before she ever came to find me. She knew she didn't have much time left, and yet she had chosen to spend those precious final months trying to make things right between us. Not for herself, not because she needed caretaking, but because she wanted me to know before it was too late that I was loved." I flew back to her hometown to arrange the funeral. The house she had once fought so hard to keep me tied to was nearly empty now, its walls echoing with the memories of a life we had both outgrown. Old family members, the same ones who had whispered and judged all those years ago, showed up at the service, offering hollow condolences that barely touched me. I didn't care about them, I only cared about her. I stood over her casket, the words catching in my throat. My heart split wide open. "We lost so much time," I whispered. "But I'm grateful for what we found again. I'm grateful for you." And I meant it. Every broken, painful, beautiful bit of it. Grieving her now feels different from grieving my father all those years ago. With him, there had been no loose ends, no unfinished apologies, just raw, unbearable absence. With her, there is sadness, yes, but also a strange kind of peace. Because we tried, we didn't pretend the past didn't happen, we didn't erase the scars, we just built something new on top of them. Small, messy, real. And in the end, that's what matters. Not how we started, not how we broke, but how we chose to love fiercely, stubbornly in the time we had left. I sit now on my porch, sipping lukewarm coffee as the sun rises slowly over a quiet morning. The world feels different somehow, like it's both heavier and lighter at the same time. I miss her. God, I miss her. But I'm grateful too. Grateful that I opened the door. Grateful that I let love back in even when it scared me. Grateful that when the final chapter closed, it wasn't anger or regret that filled the pages. It was forgiveness. It was love. If you were me, what would you have done?